When it came time for my vacation, I hadn't taken one for 3 years. I was so eager to make my company a success. I took 3 weeks instead of 2, and I wrote the book about the 12 little men. I wrote it straight off, 5, 7, sometimes 8,000 words a day. I suppose it was the worst book any man has ever written. It was a colossal tome and faulty from start to finish. But it was my first book, and I was in love with it. If I had the money, as Gede had, I would have published it at my own expense. If I had had the courage that Whitman had, I would have peddled it from door to door. Everybody I showed it to said it was terrible. I was urged to give up the idea of writing. I had to learn, as Balzac did, that one must write volumes before signing one's own name. I had to learn, as I soon did, that one must give up everything and not do anything else but write, that one must write and write and write, even if everybody in the world advises you against it, even if nobody believes in you. Perhaps one does it just because nobody believes. Perhaps the real secret lies in making people believe. Welcome to Positive Readings. That was a passage from Henry Miller's Tropic of Capricorn, where Miller writes about the struggles of trying to produce a great work of literature. Like Miller, I'm also trying to get people to believe. In my case, it's involving this novel right here, Commuting. If you're interested, the link is in the description. You can order it from Amazon. Please check it out. It's my second novel, my third book. It's set in South Korea in 2014. Like Miller's work, and like many of the other works of literature that I've talked about on this channel, this is not simply a work of entertainment. I would like to think that it aspires to literature, tries to explore the meaning of existence to a certain extent, but also entertaining to read. So if you are interested, please order a copy. Like the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn is autobiographical in nature. It's longer. It's definitely a harder book to read. There are passages in the middle of the book that the paragraphs go on, kind of monster paragraphs with no clear aim to a story. It's more of reflective writing, sometimes very much philosophical writing. The novel begins by looking at Miller working for a telegraph company called the Cosmodemonic Telegraph Company. This is a fictionalized version of his work that he actually did, working for Western Union. He's hiring all kinds of depressed, broken down people, drug addicts, prostitutes, people who are dying on the job, just a big mess of characters. So that's the first third of the book. There's a lot of sexual details in there, similar to what you would get, what he was kind of known for or infamous for in Tropic of Cancer. But the more interesting part of this novel comes in the last 2/3. We move into these kind of long memories, kind of exploration of Henry Miller's childhood, where he writes about different experiences that he had. Some of them could be his first love, learning how to play the piano, why he didn't actually become a great pianist. It was related to the fact that he was kind of too consumed by lust, partly for his piano teacher, who he depicts kind of as his first love experience. The novel also looks at Miller's first time of getting out of New York and trying to experience some escape from the city, which he seems to both love and hate. He travels out west and he feels like he's been duped. He feels like America's not what he thought it was going to be, and that's partly sets up for why he ended up going to to France, which is the theme of the novel that came before this, which is Tropic of Cancer. Also in this novel, and that's kind of where the novel ends, where so we go through these memories, and then we get into the struggle to write, the struggle to become something. So that passage I read at the opening of this video is partly that comes from the beginning, but that's talking about this trying to write, and we get that again later on. Miller has a really great line or a way to think about artists and writers. He says here this is on page 272. He says, "No man wants to be an artist. He is driven to it because the world refuses to recognize his proper leadership." So he sees himself as a writer because he can't fit in. He's a leader, but the world doesn't recognize it. So he's trying to express that through his work. And that's kind of a strange form of leadership, but it's an interesting way to think about the artists. And certainly I think the great artists do become leaders in that way. A critic once said that Miller's writing about sex and desire and lust are like the actual act, are the least interesting of his work. And I would mostly agree with that after reading this book, because this book really comes alive for me after maybe the first 100 pages. And there's a few passages I want to read from that where he is exploring these memories, specifically one summer when he was a child. "I'm thinking now about the rock fight one summer's afternoon, long, long ago, when I was staying with my Aunt Caroline up near Hell Gate. My cousin Jean and I had been corralled by a gang of boys while we were playing in the park. We didn't know which side we were fighting for, but we were fighting in dead earnest amidst the rock pile by the riverbank. We had to show even more courage than the other boys because we were suspected of being sissies. That's how it happened that we killed one of the rival gang. Just as they were charging us, my cousin Jean let go at the ringleader and caught him in the guts with a handsome-sized rock. I let go almost at the same instant, and my rock caught him in the temple, and when he went down, he lay there for good, and not a peep out of him. A few minutes later, the cops came, and the boy was found dead. He was 8 or 9 years old, about the same age as us. What they would have done to us if they caught us, I don't know. Anyway, so as not to arouse any suspicion, we hurried home. We had cleaned up a bit on the way and had combed our hair. We walked in looking almost as immaculate as when we had left the house. Aunt Caroline gave us our usual 2 big slices of sour rye with fresh butter and a little sugar over it, and we sat there at the kitchen table listening to her with an angelic smile. It was an extremely hot day, and she thought we had better stay in the house, in the big front room where the blinds had been pulled down, and play marbles with our little friend Joey Castlebaum. Joey had the reputation of being a little backward, and ordinarily we would have trimmed him. But that afternoon, by a sort of mute understanding, Jean and I allowed him to win everything we had. Joey was so happy that he took us down to his cellar later and made his sister pull up her dresses and show us what was underneath. Wheezy, they called her, and I remember that she was stuck to me instantly. I came from another part of the city, so far away it seemed to them that it was almost like coming from another country. They even seemed to think that I talked differently from them, whereas the other urchins used to pay to make Wheezy lift her dress up. For us, it was done with love. After a while, we persuaded her not to do it anymore for the other boys. We were in love with her, and we wanted her to go straight. So in this scene, it appears that, assuming this is Miller's real life, he's describing a moment which maybe today's culture would describe as toxic masculinity. These boys are called sissies, so they feel like they have to show that they're stronger. They're having this rock fight, and they kill another 9-year-old boy. And of course, that's followed by them being kinder to this neighbor, and in reward for that, they get this Wheezy girl to show under her dress. So that's the memory, but then we also get kind of years later, the reflection on that, which is followed, and I think it's quite interesting. When I left my cousin at the end of the summer, I didn't see him again for 20 years or more. When we did meet, what deeply impressed me was the look of innocence he wore. The same expression as the day of the rock fight. When I spoke to him about the fight, I was still more amazed to discover that he had forgotten that it was we who had killed the boy. He remembered the boy's death, but he spoke of it as though neither he nor I had had any part in it. When I mentioned Wheezy's name, he had difficulty in placing her. Don't you remember the cellar next door? Joey Castlebaum? At this, a faint smile passed over his face. He thought it extraordinary that I should remember such things. He was already married, a father, and working in a factory making fancy pipe cases. He considered it extraordinary to remember events that had happened so far back in the past. So Miller's cousin Gene fails to remember this stuff. He's caught up in this kind of adult life now, married, has a job, and this really depresses and upsets Miller. He feels like this is kind of going against the right way to live, which I think comes out later in this novel. This what he refers to as the Ovarian Trolley. That's the life, kind of the life rhythm that we should be following. So this is what he says in response to his cousin Gene's reaction. On leaving him that evening, I felt terribly despondent. It was as though he had attempted to eradicate a precious part of my life, and himself with it. He seemed more attached to the tropical fish which he was collecting than to the wonderful past. As for me, I recollect everything that happened that summer, and particularly the day of the rock fight. There are times, in fact, when the taste of that big slice of sour rye, which his mother handed me that afternoon, is stronger in my mouth than the food I am actually tasting, and the sight of Wheezy's little bud almost stronger than the actual feel of what is in my hand. The way the boy lay there after we downed him, far more impressive than the history of the World War. The whole long summer, in fact, seems like an ideal out of the Arthurian legends. I often wonder what it was about this particular summer which makes it so vivid in my memory. I have only to close my eyes a moment in order to relive each day. The death of the boy certainly caused me no anguish. It was forgotten before a week had elapsed. The sight of Wheezy standing in the gloom of the cellar with her dress lifted up, that too passed easily away. Strangely enough, the thick slice of rye bread, which his mother handed me each day, seems to possess more potency than any other image of that period. I wonder about it, wonder deeply. Perhaps it is that whenever she handed me the slice of bread, it was with a tenderness and sympathy that I had never known before. She was a very homely woman, my Aunt Caroline. Her face was marked by the pox, but it was a kind, winsome face which no disfigurement could mar. So Miller is trying to, investigate why these memories are so strong of this summer. And partly here, I think he's getting at something that he brings up in, I believe it is the Tropic of Cancer, where he talks about the fact that he just wants to be loved. He's searching for love, even though he's kind of going about it the wrong way in all these brothels and poorhouses, and that perhaps is what brings this memory of the rye bread. It's the fact that his Aunt Caroline here was actually showing him some tenderness, which he wasn't shown at other points in his life. Another darker memory that Miller looks at is how his neighborhood in New York changed, and partly this is a demographic change of kind of the older, wealthier Jews, even though he said he grew up poor. His father was a tailor, and made a good living off that. But the Jewish community moves in, this other German kind of community moves out, and we have this description of this kind of sociological change that happens here in this neighborhood. It's certainly, I would say, as just reading this one fragment, it might even sound anti-Semitic, but I don't think it is. I don't think Miller is, if you look at some of the other things that he says throughout his work. He is a complicated character like this. There's some scenes in this book that I won't be reading, but where he's very much aware of the injustice, say, done to African Americans, yet he freely uses the N-word as well throughout the book, again, maybe just reflecting the time period. So it seemed, at least, until the Williamsburg Bridge was opened, whereupon there followed the invasion of the Jews from Delancey Street, New York. This brought about the disintegration of our little world, of the little street called Fillmore Place, which, like the name itself, was a street of value, of dignity, of light, of surprises. The Jews came, as I say, and like moths they began to eat into the fabric of our lives until there was nothing left by this moth-like presence, which they brought with them everywhere. Soon the street began to smell bad. Soon the real people moved away. Soon the houses began to deteriorate, and even the stoops fell away, like the paint. Soon the street looked like a dirty mouth, with all the prominent teeth missing, with ugly charred stumps gaping here and there, the lips rotten, the palate gone. Soon the garbage was knee-deep in the gutter, and the fire escapes filled with bloated bedding, with cockroaches, with dried blood. Soon the kosher sign appeared on the shop windows, and there was poultry everywhere, and lax, and sour pickles, and enormous loaves of bread. Soon there were baby carriages in every areaway, and on the stoops, and in the little yards, and before the shop fronts. And with the change, the English language also disappeared. One heard nothing but Yiddish. Nothing but this sputtering, choking, hissing tongue in which God and rotten vegetables sound alike and mean alike. We were among the first families to move away following the invasion. 2 or 3 times a year I came back to the old neighborhood for a birthday or for Christmas or Thanksgiving. With each visit, I marked the loss of something I had loved and cherished. It was like a bad dream. It got worse and worse. The house in which my relatives had lived was like an old fortress going to ruin. They were stranded in one of the wings of the fortress, maintaining a forlorn island life, beginning themselves to look sheepish, hunted, degraded. They even began to make distinctions between their Jewish neighbors, finding some of them quite human, quite decent, clean, kind, sympathetic, charitable, etc., etc. To me, it was heart-rending. I could have taken a machine gun and mowed the whole neighborhood down, Jew and Gentile together. So while this description of this change is certainly well written, very vividly captured, we also get these kind of murderous thoughts from the character, these dark, antisocial thoughts. And I think that's what you get a lot of with Miller. He's constantly, bringing these in. Of course, he's talking about how he felt as a child at that time and trying to capture that feeling. But it's there. You get that mix of harsh kind of truths, harsh perspectives from the characters, kind of a cruelness that can run through humanity, but also a beauty in the description. While this novel is called The Tropic of Capricorn, I'm not sure why, to be honest. On the opening page, it says on the Ovarian Trolley, and which is a strange concept, I think. Ovarian Trolley, the Ovarian life, related definitely to this kind of obsession with the sexual act that you get in a lot of Miller's work, but also associated with what I was just reading, this cruelness, this kind of following your desire, even if it's cruel. And on page 246, he starts to explore this. And again, this is a part that's a bit more philosophical. This isn't a narration. This is really just Miller kind of free writing about this idea. The Ovarian world is the product of a life rhythm. The moment a child is born, it becomes part of a world in which there is not only the life rhythm, but the death rhythm. The frantic desire to live at any cost, is not the result of the life rhythm in us, but of the death rhythm. So that's an interesting contradiction right there. According to Miller, this desire to live is actually driven by the death rhythm. I guess it would be a response to that. I think that's what he means. There is not only no need to keep alive at any price, but if life is undesirable, it is absolutely wrong. This keeping oneself alive out of a blind urge to defeat death is in itself a means of sowing death. So trying to stay alive at any cost is going to sow death, cause more death. Everyone who has not fully accepted life, who is not increment in life, is helping to fill the world with death. And again, I think fully accepting life means following your desire, doing what you want to do. I think that's what he's saying. Not here exactly, but other places in the book. To make the simplest gesture with the hand can convey the utmost sense of life. A spoken word with the whole being can give life. Activity in itself means nothing. It is often a sign of death. By simple external pressure, the force of surroundings and example, by the very climate which activity engenders, one can become part of a monstrous death machine, such as America, for example. So I think he looks at America as being this death machine, again, all moving to this death rhythm instead of just following the life rhythm of following the desire of what you want, more of following a fear of death. What does a dynamo know of life, of peace, of reality? What does any individual American dynamo know of the wisdom and energy of the life abundant and eternal possessed by a ragged beggar sitting under a tree in the act of meditation? What is energy? What is life? And I think coupled in this is this constant idea of renunciation, which is contradictory kind of, because it goes against, it's no desire, right? So having no desire at all, just accepting things, and that would be the life rhythm as well. Again, there's a contradiction there, but Miller's full of them. Developing this idea further on the next paragraph, on the next page, he says, men are lonely and out of communication with one another because all their inventions speak only of death. So we're separated from our invention because of our inventions, all this stuff that we're following, trying to prolong our life because we're afraid of death. We're separated from each other. So we're lonely. Death is the automaton which rules the world of activity. Death is silent because it has no mouth. Death has never expressed anything. Death is wonderful too, afterlife. Only one, like myself, who has opened his mouth and spoken, only one who has said yes, 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 and again yes, can open wide his arms to death and know no fear. Death is a reward, yes. Death is a result of fulfillment, yes. Death as a crown and shield, yes. But not death from the roots, isolating men, making them bitter and fearful and lonely, giving them fruitless energy, filling them with a will which can only say no. The first word any man writes when he has found himself, his own rhythm, which is the life rhythm, is yes. Everything he writes thereafter is yes, 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 yes in 1,000 million ways. No dynamo, no matter how huge, not even a dynamo of 100 million dead souls can combat one man saying yes. So again, this life rhythm seems to be finding your fulfillment, finding yourself, which seems to be, for Miller, by following desire, but then getting to a place where you have no desire. And I think you can see that a bit in a book written after this, The Colossus of Marushi, where he talks a little bit more about this idea. This clash of the death rhythm and the life rhythm is brought out in at the end here in a kind of humorous passage where Miller's character is trying to make money selling Encyclopedia Britannica. He goes to someone's house and he has this little interaction. He asked me innocently what then had brought me to his home. And without a minute's hesitation, I told him an astounding lie, a lie which was later to prove a great truth. I told him I was only pretending to sell the encyclopedia in order to meet people and write about them. That interested him enormously, even more than the encyclopedia. He wanted to know what I would write about him, if I could say. It's taken me 20 years to answer that question, but here it is. If you would still like to know, John Doe of the city of Bayonne, this is it. I owe you a great deal because after that lie I told you, I left your house and I tore up the prospectus furnished me by the Encyclopedia Britannica and threw it in the gutter. I said to myself, I will never again go to people under false pretenses, even if it is to give them the Holy Bible. I will never again sell anything, even if I have to starve. I'm going home now, and I will sit down and really write about people. And if anybody knocks at my door to sell me something, I will invite him in and say, "Why are you doing this?" And if he says it is because he has to make a living, I will offer him what money I have and beg him once again to think what he is doing. I want to pervert as many men as possible from pretending that they have to do this or that because they must earn a living. It is not true. One can starve to death. It is much better. Every man who voluntarily starves to death throws another cog into the automatic process. I would rather see a man take a gun and kill his neighbor in order to get the food he needs than keep up the automatic process by pretending that he has to earn a living. That's what I want to say, Mr. John Doe. So in this last passage here, this brings together both Miller's philosophy and his lived experience, say, of going around trying to sell things, but also this struggle to write and how he decides that he needs to follow this life rhythm, that meaning to relinquish these other phony things in his life, whether it's trying to make money, trying to maintain a job, trying to live in the way that society is telling him to live, and so he can just do what he needs to do, and that's, for him, it's writing. Again, this is probably the most challenging Henry Miller novel that I've read, but in the end, I thought it was worth reading. Henry Miller's The Tropic of Capricorn.